Linux Weekly Daily Wednesdays, where we're going to sit back and talk about some of the fun things we found going on in the world of Linux and open source. And this week, Chromecast, hipsters, and Pedro's favorite topic, System D. I'm Ben Stone. That's Joe Bride. And that is the aforementioned Pedro Mateus. Hello. What's up?
I don't have an irrational hate for System D.
Listen, he has such seething rage. He couldn't even say it, man.
It's a perfectly rational hate at that. But no, actually, I got a chance to play with a Raspberry Pi today. Because, yeah, as it turns out, all of the Android power adapters I had, none of them could quite reach 2.5 amps on the micro USB out. So yeah, the best ones I had were for the Shield tablets, which were 2.1 amps. And that was just low enough that this wouldn't give any power to the HDMI. It would still run fine. It's just the HDMI would go, not without
Did you get the color wheel? Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one, I went to the Adafruit website. It's like, oh, it's like £10 for an actual power supply. Okay, cool. I'll get that. So it works.
Good to know. Good to report. You got a scale update this week?
Oh, oh yes. As everyone knows, we've been preparing for scale for the arrival of LGC people and hosts and Linux chicks. And even today I wore this is my oldest scale shirt, scale 5X. Pretty cool. And but in the show notes, I put the link to scale, which is at the Pasadena Convention Center, March 7th through 10th. Of this year, 2019. And you can use our Linux Chicks LA promo code capital CHIX for 50% off of your scale registration. So all of you out there listening, this is the code you can use for Linux Chicks and for Linux Gamecast.
Nice.
So there you go. Yeah. And it really does. It brings the ticket from 4 days from down to $42.50. Inexpensive. So for 4 days, that's great.
Nice to know. Everyone head out to scale. Let's flood that place.
Yes, definitely.
I've been playing around, getting to, oh man, all right, Canonical. Come here. We got to talk about something.
Yes.
I ran into a situation. Maybe this could be one of those oddball Venn situations. I'm fully aware of this, but so I want to play around with the, just build the latest OBS, which I'm familiar with doing. This is not an adventure for me at all. And I was like, okay, we're gonna do this, and I compiled it, got all my deps, and built it out. I was like, wait a minute, what version of FFmpeg is shipping with 1804? Really? Wow, that's old. Found not an official PPA of FFmpeg, which was based on the 4 series. I'm like, oh, that's great. Easy mode. Threw that in, rebuilt. Oh, right, this one's not built with NV encode support. That's useless. Then, nope, snap to the rescue.
Yes.
There 100%, man. There was a snap. It is as easy as snap install FFmpeg 4X series NV encode support.
Yes.
I happy as I can be, and I'm like, yay! That saves me all the time. This is great. Okay, well, let's now. I should have knew something was wrong, man, because it's like, wait a minute, it didn't. I already have FFmpeg installed via app. Okay, well, oh, okay, it's still, all right, let's take the one apped out. Well, if you do that, we got to get rid of KDN Live. Like, really? All right, fine. I blew it away just for testing purposes. And it was like, sure enough, the snap version, it picked up, you just FFmpeg and it'll give you that. I thought that was fun. Then I ran into the situation of like, well, I need KDN Live to work with. So if I try to install that, it wants to install FFmpeg. And this is when we learned that Snap and app can't talk to each other. And they don't, Yeah. So
yeah, that's not just a problem with apt. That's actually a problem with Yum and a lot of traditional Linux package managers.
I'm trying to just throw Snap under the bus. Come on. I'm not.
Actually, Snap is actually doing a pretty good job. When you're building, or if you're using the new OBS with the Snap and it's actually picking up on the Snap version, that's good. That's awesome.
It's doing what it's supposed to. But basically what I've had to do right now, because, I went to check this out with KDN Live. I was like, well, there's a Snap of KDN Live, and it's no longer being maintained. Then you try the app image, and that's a hot busted mess too.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So, basically I had to do the force depends remove with FFmpeg, which is, it worked because it's KDN Live. I was able to get KDN Live installed, and that's fine, and just manually pointed at the Snap package, the binaries for FFplay and all that. Everything's fine, except for every time I start up the system, it's like, there's a confliction. And I even put the FFmpeg on hold. There's an app command you can do that, and just ignore this package. And it's like, no, something's broken. It's like,
yeah.
That's app for you.
And it's yeah.
I would just like to thank everyone at home and everyone listening for letting me vent that out. Anyway, we're up and running.
Well, maybe Popey and Wimpy can help us along the way too.
Oh no, they don't want to deal with anything. Really. It's like, no, it's just he's doing weird things. Just let him have
it. We don't want to support your particular hedge case.
Yeah.
Don't ever. Like, well, maybe we don't look into it. I assure you, no one else is having this issue. Speaking of making things do weird things, Chromecast.
Well, it may not seem that weird if you're one of those people who has been a diehard Firefox fan for years, but you really like the idea of a Chromecast, and just like the very notion of running Chrome irks you to the bone. So, finally, it took them long enough, I guess, someone has come up with a Firefox extension that lets you cast to your Chromecasts, to your Rokus, well, there was already one for the Roku, but this one specifically works for the Chromecast, and it's aptly called FXCast. You can go to their website. It's just a GitHub free website repo that you can create from your repo, and if you actually go to the GitHub page for the project, you see everything it needs. If I had to point out one big flaw with this, is that if you just go to the website, you get 2 Linux download options, which is debs and RPMs. Can I get a tar.gz, please? Or an app image?
Pedro,
anything.
It's available on Arch, man. What else do you need?
Of course it's available on Arch. They just take debs and import them into the AUR. That's what they do.
That's good to know. I mean, that's been a problem. I ran into a legitimate situation where I know I have a Chromecast. I've exchanged money for one. I don't know where it's at. My working theory right now is I've given it to someone. But I wanted to try it out, but I know that's been a problem with Firefox not being able to use that. So
yeah.
However,
it's just nice to have this option, because we haven't had this ability for non-WebKit Blink browsers. So it's awesome.
It's not ready for public consumption, but get out there and test it and send back the feeds. Be like, hey, did this work?
Yes.
Maybe you can work with this and whatnot. And all this business is going to be in our show notes, so don't stress about finding it. Okay, hipsters.
Jill, as our resident hipster, since we don't have Strider, you get to be our resident hipster.
I have waited for almost 2 years, and now CRT, or Cool RetroTerm version 1.1.1 is out with a major release with many bug fixes, updates, and performance improvements. Yay! It definitely runs faster than it used to, even as an app image, which is really awesome. That was one of my complaints before, is it used to be kind of sluggish. But it now includes support for system fonts, so there are a lot more fonts to choose from. And what's really awesome, it's easy to adjust your configurations. You just right right click, and that will bring up the settings menu where you can change profiles, screen brightness, fonts, effects, etc. And I actually often use the vintage monochrome green template because I love those IBM days of green on black, and turn off scan lines, which is the glow line effect, and flickering to make it easier on the eyes. And yeah, this is one of the terminals that I go to regularly just to have fun and have something different to do all my command lining. And it's really awesome. I've always loved this project.
Okay. It's just like I was like, I really want to emulate a low-res broken monitor, apparently.
Aww.
Okay, I mean, listen, it's a neat project. What was it? It was a couple of years back because I was amazed it was available an app, and I was like, oh, sudo apt install. It's like, you need to install 200 megs of it. I was like, no, I don't. I eventually did just to try it out. I like it. I mean, it's something that I played with. It falls into that category of, okay, I'll play with this for like 10 or 15 minutes and just kind of go back to using a normal terminal.
Yeah, I once tried to set up when I still had like the Toshiba netbook. I tried to set up like cool RetroTerm, just a whole X session of just cool RetroTerm in a full screen mode with like the settings looking all neat, so it would look really nice if you turned it on and it loaded straight into that. Except that netbook had a single core AMD APU, and the battery, while running cool RetroTerm, which is very much reliant on OpenGL for all those screen effects that you see, yeah, the battery went in no time. It was even slower than usual because it was already a very slow netbook. So I'm like, and we're back to Terminator because, well, that works. And it lets me have multiple terminals in a single window.
What it needs is ray tracing support. Okay. Hey. And I don't say that because I'm desperately looking for ways to justify the purchase of
you are, though.
Which I might be. 2 years of upstream, that's great. Big performance improvements. The new shiny, literally frame, system font support, that's a big one. A lot of stuff under the hood. So good on you, mates.
Awesome.
Okay. Jill, you like big.
Yes. This is awesome. This is the big app icon redesign. Gnome 3.32 is going to come with a radical new icon style and new guidelines for app developers. And having clearer guidelines and more constraints for Gnome icons will make it so much easier for developers and graphics designers to make icons. And now with the new Gnome app icon redesign, you will only need to make one full color icon and a monochrome symbolic icon instead of making 7 separate raster icons. It's just going to make life so much easier. I've been caught in this where I've had to make 7 different sized icons for Gnome, and it was always a pain. And they're actually going to use a scalable vector graphics SVG file, which is great because it creates a smaller file size, but yet it can be scaled. The icon could be scaled to any size without loss of quality. So that was a really smart decision for Gnome to do.
It's great. By all means, improve on the icons. We've been using PNGs on Linux for icons for ages. And SVGs, you can actually just make a teeny tiny little 24 by 24 icon and then scale it to whatever you want, and it always looks good. So all I'm asking is, can we have a sort of papery flat icon theme that isn't paper or papyrus and it looks good, please?
True story. I can't tell whether or not you're being facetious.
No.
I'm being a little bit. But in all honesty, I never really go above like 64 pixels of icon size, and that's in my pictures folder because that's how big the thumbnails are by default.
You know these things too.
Yeah, I do. I helped develop a distribution a long time ago.
And you killed it.
It wasn't me. It was actually System D, but we'll get to that.
You walked right in and shot it. It didn't stand a chance.
That was actually systemd but we'll get to that.
Well, like seriously, if I'm going to be rolling it back, it was like, well, the distro is, hopefully I'm not alone, because I see this all the time. People will spend time making their desktop and worried about icon sets and so on. I'm doing work on the computer. I don't have time to look at my desktop or my icons.
See, it's actually really interesting, because as you're doing like that first install, and there's a lot of dead time of waiting for the package manager or waiting for something to install, you just set a new
if
theme.
I'm being generous, maybe 3 minutes to install Linux. Maybe.
Yeah, nowadays with your NVMEs and whatnot.
Are we doing a back in my day thing? I can pretend. Listen, if you want to do role play, we can do it. Okay.
NVMe SSDs, they made Linux installs go like that.
No, that's great. It's Gnome. Gnome's always been the pretty one, right?
Yeah,
that was Katie, but sure.
It's one of the prettier. Yeah.
They always put design in front of everything else, kind of like Unity did. But we'll get to that too.
Do you have like a checklist of people you're trying to set off?
Yes, actually.
Really? All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know it, you love it, and it's also kind of chromium, but it's Opera 58, and it's going to give you a warning with multiple tabs. That's right. If you ever accidentally close that window, it won't let you anymore. It'll give you, I was like, hey, are you sure? And you'll go, yes. Then you'll immediately turn that feature off, and it will never save you again.
Yes.
Yeah. That's one of the things, man. I mean, it's definitely going to warn you before closing any Opera windows with when you have multiple tabs open. That's a good thing. Another thing the two things that come in Opera 58, and this is the first release of 2019, is for our brothers and sisters, Russian users. They now have integrated Yandex Zen, so it's kind of like Google News. So it's kind of like a recommendation service.
Yeah.
Am I alone with the? Hey, I think Firefox definitely does it out of the box with. You're closing a window with multiple tabs open, and my first step was how do I disable that?
Yes.
Yeah, no, that was always one of the first features that I disabled in Firefox. Though when they introduced like tab pinning, I ended up pinning a couple of tabs of like the stuff I opened up more regularly, because it's like, oh, it automatically loads them when I get back, and it cleans the rest of the session. So yeah, I'll take that, please.
Yeah. Yeah, well, as Pedro and Vince said, this used to be turned on by default in Firefox. But since Firefox 50, you now have to turn it on in about.config or use the show your windows or tabs from last time option in general startup settings to restore your tabs. So they assume that since you want to restore tabs now, that you don't need to have that question on closing, because you can restore them. So that makes sense.
Don't you love that Russian roulette game? Speaking of like power outage, or you accidentally close everything, or kernel panic.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, none of that was bookmarked. You get your pinky toes crossed when you're starting the browser. Please bring it back.
That's one of the things that Chrome does, in my opinion, that's great, is if, say, you close like 2 or 3 windows with a bunch of tabs on them.
History.
You go to the history, and like the first option is reopen like all of the windows that you had open with all of the tabs from the last session. That's great. Can we have more of that, please?
As people who regularly open up show notes twice a week.
Yes. Yes. And lots of tabs.
Very handy. Very handy. If I had to pick something, if I couldn't use XFCE as my desktop manager, I honestly think LXQt would be my next choice, and it's getting a little bit better, Pedro.
Yay!
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, it is. And as someone who's actually been running it on a ThinkPad T42 from 2005, I can tell you it's very nice. There's a new version out, LXQt not 0.14. There's a bunch of new highlights, and they also have some notes for packagers. If you are packaging LXQt for any distro of any kind, make sure you follow the build order. It's very important. They have very acceptable minimum requirements, if we're being honest. Though you will have to use CMake, so if that's not your cup of chainsaw, sorry. The new notable changes they have improved on libfmqt, which is they completely dropped the old libfm dependencies, and everything is now working properly as it should in the file manager. Just a bunch of improvements across the board, and it's actually really nice to see. And if I had to point out like one thing that they're missing, the package manager, the file manager, and a couple of other quality of life things that stuff like Mate already has. It could be very easily introduced to LXQt, but I get that you need to have a functional, stable base first before you start introducing new stuff. So it's very good to see the progress, and turning on that particular ThinkPad T42 with only 2 gigs of RAM and seeing LXQt take, I don't know, 80 megs of RAM. It's like, oh, yeah, that's nice. That's
refreshing.
Very nice.
Yeah, I'm really happy about this update. They said that there's going to be fixes for virtual screens with multiple monitors, especially regarding desktop updates. Awesome. That's always been one of my problems with LXQt and LXDEs. Multi-monitor support has always been an issue, especially in LXDE. And I was so looking forward to LXQt fixing this, and it looks like they are. So now I'll be able to use this desktop more without it going funky on my 3-monitor setup.
Y'all definitely have to go back and give it a shot, Jill.
Yeah.
That has always been, so that you put that in. Yes. It's like, yeah, all right. Maybe we're going to roll back with that.
Yeah, definitely. So looking forward to that. And they said now has support for desktop shortcuts for computer, network, user directory, trash, etc. And the trash icon is interactive and supports trashing by drag and drop. You know, like other modern
basic functionality.
window managers. Yes. I don't use icons on my desktop, so it doesn't matter.
To be fair, neither do I. But yeah, the drag and drop thing, you'd think that there would be base functionality that you just have.
I know. Yes, I know.
Seriously, I lived without that functionality for so long, I don't trust its ability to do that. I know it's there.
Yeah. Drag and drop on Linux didn't work for a long time.
Yeah.
And I never experienced it anywhere else. I remember when XFCE introduced desktop icons. I was like, no, what? Oh, we're going to be like those people now?
Yes.
Desktop icons? Ugh.
I use Mate, and I have 3 full desktops in front of me, and not a single one has any icons unless I plug in like a flash drive. Then it shows up when there's an icon there.
Yeah.
One of the things they did add history-based tab switching to QTerminal. So that's neat.
Cool.
Go take it for a test drive. It'll be real easy. I might try it out. I don't really have hard mode to throw out. I only have 3 monitors set up. Well, 4 technically if you count the encoder.
I think it only starts to throw a bit of a hissy fit if you have multiple X sessions. But if you have like all your monitors in the 1X session, like extended desktop, it's fine.
Okay. All right. Maybe we'll play with that. Okay, that's not all the awesome window managing news we have this week. He says, slyly transitioning to the next story.
Yes. So here is another window manager, another one of my favorites, actually. After 1.5 years, awesome version 4.3 is out. This release adds a few large features and user interface upgrades while preserving full compatibility with existing user configurations. And it includes a new GTK color palette based theme, which adds uniformity to the Wii bar, menu, and title bar. And another cool thing that I actually really like is there's an addition of a widget that allows you to change layouts really easily. And yes, one of my biggest.
That they use Awful, all right?
Oh yeah, yes.
Awful pop-up.
Yeah, they use Awful configs. That's always been fun. And the menu bar loads faster when booting. This used to be very sluggish at startup and was always one of my complaints. So they fixed that. and Awesome actually is a very unique window manager in that it is dynamic and highly configurable and lives in the world between a tiling window manager and a full screen one via changing to many different layout profiles. And that's one of the things I like about it. You can run it in tile mode or you can run it in full screen mode. And you can even actually do some 3-monitor gaming with it, but it does have some issues and some games don't run, but it's
yeah. Speaking of games,
yes.
Just remember, if you're using Awesome and you run into a bug in a game, make sure you tell Iculus about it. You can go back and watch the interview show when we had Iculus on, and he'll tell you all about why Awesome is not so awesome for games.
Awesome for yes.
See, this kind of boils down to I'm with Iculus on, like, listen, if you're running Awesome, that's your problem.
Oh.
And I don't say that. I don't say that.
Poison.
I don't say it in a negative way.
Yes.
I'm like, you could probably figure it out. Or if I'm going to ask you for a detailed bug report, you can give it to me. You're not going to go, it's broke. How do I Linux?
Yeah.
There are a couple of those people.
Yes.
Stick around for after the show. I got a tale for everyone.
I'd like to hear it. Yes.
Okay. Actually, it's probably a good time to go make some popcorn because Pedro's just going to poo-poo on System D for probably about 3 minutes.
Before I get to that, this particular bit of news comes from LWDW.net, and it's actually, there's a link to the video that, oh God, what was it? Benno Rice from Down Under, he did a video about the tragedy of System D, and he goes in. It's actually a really nice video. You should totally watch it. It's he's a BSD developer, and he basically is saying, look, BSD doesn't have System D, but we kind of need a lot of the functionality that it brings because init D is horrible. It's outdated. It's basically obsolete at this point. So we need something better. And System D, for better or worse, depending on how you fall on that particular issue, actually does all of that. And yeah, he uses like the term tragedy, and he, like, one of the first things he shows you in the video is like the definition of tragedy. And it's like watching a not so good situation unfold into something that will generate some catharsis for the audience and the people watching, whatever. And, you know, irony of ironies, in this particular one, it seems that the catharsis in this particular tragedy doesn't fall to the audience, but instead falls to the writer, Mr. Leonard Pottering himself, who created System D. And, you know, depending on how you feel about Leonard himself, he completely disregarded any and all of the mostly valid comments that people had about System D when it first came out, just like he did with Pulse Audio, and now both Pulse Audio and System D are everywhere. So yeah. Good on you, Leonard.
Yeah.
You know what? It's in a functional state because I pick my battles nowadays, and System D was not a battle for me. It's like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm not going to touch this one. You know, I like options, and there will continue to be, just like Pulse Audio. I know people that are just like, never, to this day, also for life, bro. And cool. You know, that's one of the beautiful things about Linux. And there will be System D free systems for those opposed to it. They exist. And, you know, Rice, he's right, man. The world is indeed changing, and you know, Pedro's going to be like, meh, kick his can, and that's great. But you know, you can either go against that change, or you know, you can go with it, or try to resist it. One of those paths, man, is going to be more rewarding than the other. But Pedro's like, hey, look, can kick it.
Look,
now
System D killed the
check out that mute button, ladies and gentlemen. Let's focus on like picking a winner. This is what I want. I think the System D thing's over. I let Pedro talk for like 3 minutes. I timed it. System D won. Like it or not. That's what, I'm not saying it's the best solution. No, I'm not. I'm just saying that's where it's going. Deal with it. You don't have to deal with it. You got options. What I want to see is everyone, let's put all this energy and like back and forwards and pick a winner in this package stuff so we don't have snap flat app pack image things.
Yes.
Let's get that sorted. Jill, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, Benno Rice points out that Systemd is really a modern day container of applications, and that the next generation, quote, doesn't think about systems in the same way. They see things more in terms of APIs and containers. And this is just so true. You know, I myself have always looked at Systemd as a sandboxing of the init system, of mounting file systems and starting daemons as a positive. Mostly because it's a unique approach to unify service configuration, and it was something different, which I want our operating system to progress.
Yeah, and that's one of the things he brings up. It's like change when it comes to nerds. Change is great unless it doesn't come from us, because if it's coming from someone else, then it's the devil. You got to get rid of it, and that's part of the reason why some people have.
I think you could even take another step back. Like, change is great unless it's something you like.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's you have all the options, and matter of fact is Systemd, being as pervasive as it is and being as all-encompassing as it is, it has its benefits, because it actually lets you have one thing to control the bulk of the software running in user space that you don't usually interact with. It's just the auto start stuff, the mounting stuff, the login stuff. Yeah, it can be a bit scary. It's basically svc host.exe, and we all know how that worked for Windows, but it killed Fuduntu, so that's that. There's that.
Oh.
Still better. Oh.
Yes, I am.
Yes, it is. Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about a bank of 16 faders. No, that's not the latest prog rock band coming out of, I don't know, Scandinavia. This is something you can make at home, and it's a bank of faders, which is neat, because you're like, whoa, those are expensive, and maybe I'm into music production or anything like that. Maybe you just really want to get creative and do things with your hands. You can also do that. What is it? You never heard of it. This is something that's going to work with Korg and Arturia MIDI standards. It's not going to work with like Mackie or anything like that, but it is MIDI, so you can plug it directly into your DAW. And these are used for, well, what you would think they're used for. Adjusting volumes, flipping knobs, making switches, basically anything in your digital audio workstation, be it Bitvig, Ardour, or anything like that, you can control with this in various ways. I mean, they're fader banks. Fader banks, they're going to fade. You're going to be looking at like $50 for the board, $14 a pop for those faders, though. So you might be able to squeeze in a little under 300 wet stinky caches for this, but it's a neat project. I dig it. It is pricey, though. You know, when I saw something like this, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is brilliant. And why I thought this was brilliant is, you can kind of see it, right?
There's something there. Yeah.
There's something there. Yeah. I promise you there's a 9-bank, basically that thing on steroids is what we use. And people say like, that's the mixer. No, it's not. It's control interface. And this is like the Behringer X-Touch Compat, which you can get for about $300, and it's got a lot more functionality to it. And it's also got motorized faders, which, trust me, if you're going to be using faders, you want motorized ones. Like, no, I don't need them. Okay. But
you better hope that software has persistence.
No, man. Here's the thing, man. I tried like, just like regular faders. If you find like on this giant mixer, which was over here, when you're doing that with a DAW, it's just the MIDI interface, man. It can get jumpy. So you want that notch control. Plus, you can make the faders move by moving stuff on your DAW. That's totally worth the price right there. You're like, oh. This is a great project, though. If it wasn't for the cost of entry, but it's completely open source. That's what we're talking about it. And the firmware for the chip and everything is available to everyone. And I think that's good. I mean, yeah, maybe. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Pedro, are you excited? Are you going to build one tomorrow? Are you?
No, because I looked at it. It's like, oh, okay. So you need this and this. Oh, that's like the cheapest one you can get, and that's cheapest in replacing those aluminium or aluminum, depending on where you are in the world. Replacing that faceplate with something like, I don't know, wood. It would actually significantly bring the price down a little bit, but you're still spending over $200 to make that. And it's just that. It's a dumb fader panel. That's all it does. So yeah, you better hope that your software has persistence, because where you have those faders, if the system forgets where the audio levels were, that's completely useless. You might as well start from scratch, unplug it, bring everything down, or put it in the middle, and that's it.
Well, one of the things you're going to be dealing with, I mean, if this is going to work with like the Korg interface, it's kind of like the Sex Touch I have, it'll work with the Mackie protocol, which are predefined MIDI protocols. And if it can pull that up, you're good. You can save that, or you can set them as just generic MIDI devices, which is how I have this one programmed. Because that's the beautiful thing about an interface is you can like, all right, but it's just a fader bank. So this is another issue. When I was talking about motorized, trust me, Linux Audio Cast is almost over, kids.
You want those motorized faders.
When you talk about positioning, because I can have these in any position, whatever, but once our door kicks in, they jump back to where they were left. So you don't have to worry about that. So, Jill, are you going to make Steve build one? Say, no more models. Take all this model stuff away and give him parts and see what he comes up with.
Yeah. Well, I've always been wanting to get Steven and Minimoog, and this would be a nice way to control it because it does MIDI data over USB or MIDI data over 3.5 millimeter stereo TRS jack, which is really cool. And I actually could see musicians using this a lot, especially, you know, in the chiptunes area where, you know, you want to build things that are open source and make your own tunes. So build some more pots. That's always a good thing.
I think it's an interesting thing to play with. Plus, you can always add more to it. I mean, getting the idea of just how that's going to plug in, looking over the code, and how the MIDI interface just works. I mean, even working over USB, I was like, oh, that's a thing, because I'm old, and that didn't exist until I started playing around with this stuff. And yeah, that's really cool. Really cool. Glad to see that project. Hey, if you like what we're doing, consider support the show. You can do that. This is our little ad where we don't say, hey, man, I would really like to thank the Dollar Shave Club for helping me build my website. It's so great. I slept on it. I don't know.
You just said their name, Fed. That basically is an ad.
Yeah, but they're like, all right. What happens when you go to the Dollar Shave Club and you're like, where's the website support? You won't help me.
No.
You probably don't want them to build you a mattress. I don't know. Maybe you would.
Or build your own website.
I don't know, man. Razor blade mattress? I'm down with that. Anyway, hey, check it out. We're completely community supported. No ads, no tracking, none of that business. Just us. And we show up 4 days a week doing all this. Patreon. Want to thank each and every one of you. Stick around. You get your name in the credits. We like to read those out. We got a wish list. We got the Bitcoins. We got PayPal's Humble Partners. All that fun stuff that keeps us chugging along. With Patreon, you do get to hang out in our Discord, and we get access to the live audio feed. And come hang out with us Saturday. If you like what we do, every Saturday, an hour before we go live, we kind of have a LGC radio where we invite everyone to come in and say what they think about what we do. And it's a nice, interesting community. It is very entertaining. Kaleidoscope of humanity that gets along because, hey, we all have the Linux thing in common.
We all love penguins.
Thanks for making. Oh, no, we got a store. We got some new things coming up on the store.
Yes.
I got to get around to that.
Here's old merch.
There's old merch.
Defective old merch.
See, I think we could just finance the thing if I just released, you know, a new thing and be like, oh no, Jill, I had to pull it from the store. She's like, what? Order them all. Oh man. That's cool. Thanks everyone at patreon.com/LinuxGamecast. You are definitely making this possible. It's brilliant. Okay. Slice of pie. Dun, dun, dun.
And I guess the Matrix theme to that pie is appropriate because we start off with some old emulation, which is, in this case, it's for macOS, not macOS X, but macOS. And why is this in a slice of pie? Well, because the current emulator works very well on the Raspberry Pi. So basically what it does is it gets around the traditional way of emulating something, like if you've ever played around with the PlayStation 2 emulator, or really any of the ones that require you to have the BIOS file. This one doesn't emulate the software or the firmware at all. It emulates the hardware and then runs the software directly on that emulated hardware. That is very nice. That is actually very nice. Currently, it's still in the very advanced stages of development, and it is aptly named the Advanced Mac Substitute, or AMS. So keep it in mind if you had something from back in the macOS 6 days or something that you really wanted to get to running, because this basically emulates the Motorola 68000. So keep that in mind. It's like you really gotta have something that you really want to run, because there's a reason that software progressed past macOS 6. So
yes. Yeah, well, and it's definitely, this is definitely a lot easier to get up and running than Basilisk or Basilisk 2 emulator that requires a Macintosh ROM image and a copy of macOS to use with the emulator. I've been there, done that many times. So this is just really awesome. And they are looking for people in the community willing to help with the project, because it is still very much an early stage of development. They need better functionality in Debian, for instance, and they want to make an Android port as well. So that's really cool.
No, I think that's definitely a cool thing. I mean, it currently supports 1-bit deep graphics, region, circles, roundness lines, all that fun stuff. And as you pointed out, you don't need an emulator to do it. I mean, it's running on the kit, and you can do it on the Pi, and you can relive those grainy black and white grayscale goodness.
You know, this is actually a great way to go about things, because imagine what you could do with a Electron, and I'm loath to use that particular comparison, but an Electron style wrapper for running old software. That's a really good idea. That's a really good idea.
Then we can put it in a browser. Right. Up next, Raspberry Pi's new compute module, not 3, but 3 Plus. It's 10 times faster, but still just as cheap. Jill, why do I want this?
Oh, this is awesome. Well, we have had an update to Classic Pi. Now, how about the computer module? Yay. This is definitely is 10 times faster and still just as cheap. So that's, a real good plus there. And what's really cool is the Compute 3 Plus module is $25 without flash. It's $30 with 8 gigabytes of eMCC storage and $35 for 16 gigs of eMCC storage and $40 for 32 gigs of eMCC storage. So really easy to digest price range.
And it's a compute module.
There are no resellers in my region, so
they are available in the UK if you can find them in stock.
Not Pi. That's like not my car, right?
Out of stock. Yeah, I ran into that too.
Boo.
Yeah, so it's the compute module. It's basically an SO-DIMM type or size device that contains the SoC for a Raspberry Pi of whatever generation the compute module happens to refer to, and you get to put it into a device that already has one of those sockets specifically for compute modules. There are a couple of dumb TVs that have those sockets that you could just slot in the compute module, and look, now it's a smart TV. You can just boot directly into the Raspberry Pi, and you got yourself a Linux computer in your TV. And it's It's the last one with the Compute Module 3 Plus. They say that it's the last one that they're going to be releasing on the 40 nanometer process, which means possibly the next generation. Yeah, I see that cursor. The next generation is going to have a smaller process fab, which means better energy or lower energy consumption, better performance, less heat. I'm looking forward to it very much.
Good times.
Yeah, and you can use a compute module input output board with it if you want to get USB and HDMI and all that good stuff. So you can use it like a classic Pi.
I'm going to keep away from them, even when they become available. Yeah, right? See?
Yeah.
Nope.
Right there.
Nope. All right. Hey, that's going to do it for the show. But if you got some feedback and you want to throw it in our direction, we'd be happy to answer your questions, share our thoughts, or share your thoughts. And it's pretty easy to go about doing that. I mean, we got comments on the YouTubes and Twitters and stuff like that. But what's the best way to get a hold of us, Pedro?
The best way is to go to linuxgamecast.com. You hit the contact button, make sure you pick LWDW from the selection box at the bottom, and then just fill out the form. There's not even a CAPTCHA to stop you anymore, so you don't even need to prove that you're smarter than a bot. If Google's AI decides, no, you're a human, you're good. And we will most certainly feature your thing with the caveat that if you're asking us a question and it's available on the first page of Google, that you could just Google it yourself. Just saying.
All right. Let's see. Coming up first this week is
Eduardo.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he says, hello. Gnome works well on my laptop with the UHD display. My question is this. I want to buy a 1440 or 2160p monitor to supplement my 1080 single display. So is your monitor UHD or 1080p? I'm confused. You said you have said Gnome might experience issues with dual screens. Is this still the case? Well, Gnome itself hasn't been the issue with multiple screens. It's multiple X sessions in GTK3. Yeah. If you have different X sessions running on each screen, which is actually very easy to do, it's just a single flag in the Xorg config file. Gnome and any of the GTK3 based desktops had severe issues with those. Nowadays, not so much. You can actually do it just fine. Ben?
Yeah. It used to have issues with Zynorama too.
yeah, AMD Zynorama.
I don't have any experience with Gnome whatsoever, other than I've watched it flip out. Well, installing Ubuntu, and I was like, "Oh, it doesn't like this, does it?" Okay. As far as high DPI support, that's usually sorted, even with the 1080p and UHD and this ultra wide screen thing I have in opposite world mode. Haven't had any issues with that. I mean, you can set that with XFCE, but that's XFCE. It'll just let you do what you want. What about you, Jill? You got all the monitors. You got like 3 monitors too, don't you?
All the window managers work great with multi-monitor, pretty much, except maybe Awesome. Has some issues sometimes, but tiling window managers. But you know, I run XFCE, I run Flexbox, even Rat Poison, Window Maker, even all the old classic window managers run 3 monitors fine, and Gnome does it beautifully as well as KDE.
So yeah, UHD. Not now. If you would have hit me with that question, or any of us, I'm going to tell you like what 3.5. Whenever I bought this first UHD monitor, there were some things, man. But I think even out of the box, man, with the 1804, when I installed this, I didn't have to mess around with XFCE. It's like, nope, I got it figured out.
Yep.
So
and font scaling, despite GTK3 not letting you do like percentile scaling, it lets you do percentile font scaling. So that's nice.
Well, Gnome was one of the first to also support high DPI. So yeah, it's been doing that for a while. And with Pop! OS does a very good job of that as well, which is Gnome based.
Good to know. What's up next?
Up next, we have Mirror. Yeah. Jill, you take this one.
Yes, sure. And curse you. He says Nen, he meant Ven. And curse you, Ven, for the recommendation of the USB isolator. It works flawlessly. Now I have one issue. It seems the TRS jack in my M Audio mixer broke and has been causing noise on the headphone and microphone line. I was wondering if you had any recommendations for Linux-compatible USB audio devices. I have been looking into the Xenix. One font 1222 FX. Sadly, I think it is a bit overkill for my needs. Any suggestions would be appreciated. The Xenix.
Xenix.
Yeah, I couldn't read the font. Sorry.
1222 FX. That's the FX series. So yeah, they're called Xenix. That's the preamps on that series. Here's the thing. How many mixers do you use currently, Jill?
None. I have a preamp, which goes to a limiter compressor.
Pedro, how many mixers are you currently using?
I have one plugged in, but I'm not actually using it.
You just hate the environment and want to use extra power. I understand. I'm going to say with like, streaming or anything like that, if you're just dealing with like maybe game audio or one other person or audio, like, because Pedro, you stream every Tuesday.
Yeah, no, it's actually easy enough to do over software. It's just nicer if you can just reach over and adjust a fader, twirl a knob, something like that.
Yeah.
You don't need anything crazy. I would stay away from mixers unless you just want to go down that rabbit hole because, nothing good comes of it. I mean, listen to me. Just no. That's not a bad mixer, but yeah, I mean, if you're doing a game, maybe one other person that OBS can handle it. Look, free plug for that all by itself. So I think that's going to do it for this week. We look forward to your feedback and send us your happy warm thoughts because, polar vortex.
Oh, yeah.
That's maybe. I don't know.
It's cold.
We're going to get out of here. Here's some credits. Bye.
Yay! Oh, Patrick, one thing for the USB converter, if you have a dynamic mic and want to go to USB, I recommend the Radio Shack Realistic USB converter. Works really nice. It doesn't have an amp in it, but it does work really nice.
Yeah, no, these Yamaha AG03s are actually pretty cheap on Amazon right now.
Yeah.
They can do mic over XLR and 3.5 mil, so you're covered.